as you continue to progress in your talent, what we can do as a city to support you is to provide the business guidance and the support. We want to thank Port of Seattle and, of course, the beautiful city in the United States, city of Shoreline, for providing all the financial support. And I hope to be here next year. Thank you and enjoy your time.
Thank you. Well, thanks, everybody. So let's get going with our first panel of the day on licensing. And so first, let me introduce TANVI, that's joining us from Los Angeles, who runs Crucial Music. Please come have a seat over here. Choose whichever one you'd like. There you go. And Daniel, yeah, exactly. I think we're going to not do our choreographed dance number we planned. So maybe just you sit there in the middle. Awesome. Anyway, sync licensing. I'm going to ask one question and then just walk off the stage.
We didn't agree to that.
No, I think first things first. I'd love it if you guys could just give us a little sense of your background and what expertise you're bringing to the stage. So TANVI, would you please tell us a little bit about how your world involved with sync licensing?
Sure. So I'm the owner of Crucial Music, and we've been around since 2006, based in Los Angeles. And my background really started with production music library work. A company will hire musicians to create music that is then licensed and exploited by radio stations as jingles, networks as promo music, or wallpaper music for like Discovery Channel. The music is owned by the company and is bought from musicians. And the musician will be given a brief of, we want music in this style for 10 tracks for us to own, and we would pay them, and then they would keep their writer's share, and we would be the publisher, and we'd own the master. And it so happened that Jim was brilliant at building these companies and then selling them, and at one point he sold his company, and I was left wondering, what am I going to do now? And I said, well, I guess I was in Nashville. And I said, well, I guess I'll move to LA. And he said, you want to move to LA? And I said, yeah, I kind of do. He's like, okay, well, I'll give you a job for a year. And working he owned a classical music catalog, and give you a job for a year, and then we'll figure out what, then you got to go find a job. And I was like, okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. So moved to LA in 2005 and from Nashville. And within a year, I realized that while I was peddling classical music, music supervisors were asking for independent artists. And at that time, many of you probably remember the OC and Grey's Anatomy. They started using independent artist music. And I was being asked for independent artist music, and I said, no, I don't have any, but maybe I'll work on getting some. So I went to Jim and I said, look, I think there's an idea here for a company, rather than starting another production library, well, why don't we do a boutique music licensing company where we're licensing music from independent artists and providing it to the supervisors that were asking for it. It worked out that technology really came a long way for independent artists to create master quality recordings in their bedroom, and that really facilitated the use by the supervisors. It's like, oh, this stuff is sounding great, and these guys do have an ego, so they do like to break artists as well, so that kind of helped with the whole business development. So that's what we did in 2006, launched Crucial Music as an online company, and artists from all around the world can submit music, and you get a contract via email, and then you upload your waves. We've come a long way since those early days, but everything is done digitally, and the artists do the metadata, and we check it before it goes live, and then it goes live, and I start pitching the music, and we have about 19,000 tracks in the catalog. We're very boutique compared to some of the bigger competitors like Marmoset and Music Bed, and those guys are definitely, they probably have more VC money behind them and a big marketing team. But with me, it's just me and 3 other full-time employees, and we really run it like these are our babies, we're guardians of the music. That's how I like to see it.
That's great. So Daniel, why don't you tell us a little about what you do? Because you guys, again, you're working in different parts of the sync world. There may be some overlap here and there, but really different. So tell us a little about what you do with your company.
Sure. I've got a company called the License Lab. Since a year ago, just over a year ago, I actually am located here upstairs at London Bridge. Just happenstance. I would have done this anyway, but this is a great serendipity moment, which is nice.
The commute was short today.
What's that?
The commute was short.
The commute was short today, yeah. So we operate on a different end of the spectrum where some of the types of companies that Tommy was describing on the production music side, we contract with creators to create our own catalog that is distributed and exploited. We have a distribution deal with Universal Music globally. So we compete often, but in a pretty different type of catalog. I don't represent independent artists. That's, I think, all you do, right?
That's all we do, yeah.
So we both are working music licensing full time, and I think have had a nice long run for a couple decades. But I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I'm handing out briefs and coming up with concepts for albums and individual tracks and working with artists to develop them for music licensing, getting placed. But it's my own concepts. It's not the artist's record, which is a pretty different, a big difference between the two of our companies. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's great.
I was just trying to be shorter than her. I didn't want to go on this.
The competition continues. So I was looking up. It said in this is from the internet, so it could be true or not true. But in 2022, there were 599 originally scripted drama, comedy, and limited TV shows that were being produced in the United States. So if we think that each TV show usually has how many syncs of average number?
I mean, if it's a music-heavy show, it could be like 10 or 15. You know, if you're talking about something like The OC or Vampire Diaries, it's going to be back-to-back music.
Right. So I guess my first question is, are we in the golden age of sync right now with more content being created? I mean, granted, I guess the writer's strike's going on and we don't know how that's going to resolve itself, but it seems like there's a lot more people looking for sync than there were 10 years ago. Would that be accurate?
Yes, with the amount of shows, they all need music, and they are all looking for the best soundtrack to have. And, you know, with networks like CW, where they're just targeting, you know, young demographics, where music is very important to those people, you definitely have more need for music. I think it is the golden age of sync. I mean, hopefully the strike is a blip and we'll get back to the golden age, but definitely. What do you think?
I think for sure. And we've got the advantage of having been around a minute and seen the growth. We were both in the business when I was actually, when I was in LA, I used to live in LA, and we were repping independent, not independent, I mean artists, drop the word independent. We were repping artists for custom work for commercials. And I had deals with Charlie Clouser from Nine Inch Nails. I had deals with the Bodines from Milwaukee. We were working with Danny Elfman on movie scores and things like that. A whole bunch of those people, I'm not outing them, but some people, their contemporaries, their peers, wouldn't work with us under their own name. They were using pseudonyms. That is not the case these days. We are fortunate to be in I think the only space that's making any money in the music business. And that is a massive balloon in the last 10 or 15 years. Brought on by a couple things. You've got the ability for, like you were saying earlier, artists can make record quality tracks in their bedroom, no question. You can make them on your iPhone these days. It's incredible. That's new technology since we've been in the business. We're going to sound really old here for a second, but that's fine.
You're not sending wax cylinders to...
I wish.
Cylinder?
Yeah. We had the distribution side of things is really different because now everything's online. We started when, our mentor literally was the first person to put production music on compact disc. That's the guy who brought us up. So just that perspective, when you contrast it with what we deal with today, where you can make a track for the cost of your iPhone and put it online for anyone to hear, it's a golden age in many ways. The downside of that, the other side of that coin, is you are competing with every single creator on the planet instead of, we were one of, were there 12 companies when we started?
Especially with vocals. Like vocals was, when I started, it was in 2005, it was Pump Audio, and then that was it. And I was like, well, Pump Audio is crap.
You mean doing artist stuff?
Doing artist stuff, doing artist licensing. It's like their stuff is so, it's like they took anything that had a beat in it. It's like, I can do this better. But then, 5 years later, it was like, oh, there's now a new music licensing company every day. And now there's hundreds. And I will tell you, every single company has great music.
Yeah.
Everyone. And so how do you compete with that?
Not everyone. There's 2 or 3 that are really bad. but a lot.
A lot of great.
There are there's so much good music out there. So it's a golden age. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's the good and the bad that comes along with being in the golden age of it. Is like there's tons of opportunity, but the competition is exponentially higher. It really is a crowded marketplace these days. Yeah.
So I'm not a mind reader, but I guarantee half the people are out there thinking the number one question they want to ask is, how do I get my music licensed? Can we just talk through, to begin with, a little bit some of the nuts and bolts about how people submit music for consideration, what the criteria you are about whether you want to take it on or not, and what sort of, is there any opportunity for feedback as part of that process as to why or why not you don't want to take music on?
You go first.
Boy. Make me
Because
disappoint people
well,
first?
yeah, you disappoint them, and then I will disappoint them further.
I'll bad cop. I have no time for feedback. Not many companies in our space do. If you send in a demo, if you send in a link or something, I have signed people who have sent something in unsolicited. The vast majority of our business is like directly related to what you encourage people to do earlier, which is to build relationships. It's like anything in life that works really well is, instead of just being a nameless, faceless submission form, finding someone who you can work with, especially early on. I think a lot of people aim for Mount Everest in the industry when they really should be working on some starter hills in their own community, and build your own community around what you're doing. The industry is starved for unique individual perspectives on what you want to do with music. It doesn't feel like that when you're being told no all the time, but you, in my opinion, you stand a much better chance of really leaning into what makes you you and being the best version of that you can, and finding the right people who resonate with that can help you get to the next level with licensing. It's exceedingly rare that anybody will do, this is going to sound arrogant, I don't mean it in an arrogant way, but it's exceedingly rare that somebody would just deliver a track and I'm like, this is great, I'm going to buy this from you and we'll both do really well. That's not been my experience. There have been people who have sent things in and I've heard from them 3 or 4 years later. I've said, I can't do anything with this right now. I find out they landed some big deal. I'm thrilled for them. The downside of having so much music and having so much stuff in the market is I don't need this one person's thing. I want to work with people that I resonate with and really want to create something with. And that's another difference between us, I think, in terms of the way we're structured. But it's an important thing to consider when you're pitching your music and you're trying to find a relationship that can represent your music, is find someone who really understands what you're going for and who wants to support you on that growth path because small deals add up. This business is built on tons and tons of small deals. So looking for that $50,000 movie trailer, which I don't even know if those exist anymore, but $20,000, $30,000 movie trailer.
They do, but I haven't benefited from that. So.
It's rare. And that's just that you're aiming for winning a Grammy, which is like, it's great to be a member of the Academy. It's great to submit your stuff for Grammys. The chances of us winning a Grammy, not our industry, but anybody in this room, that's not, the point shouldn't be winning a Grammy. The point should be building relationships, making music you love. And if something like that comes along, a big movie trailer placement, winning a Grammy, those things in my mind are just frosting on a life that you've enjoyed and making great stuff that you're really proud of, you know?
Awesome. Online component of people submitting music, but when people are sending you guys music for consideration, tell us a little about, again, Daniel said, sometimes the more original content it perks the ear up and is more interest than something that just sounds like everything else. But how are you evaluating stuff? And then what are you thinking? Are you thinking in your mind like, oh, I know exactly where I could pitch this or things like that? When
absolutely. The first thing you got to remember is once you start exploring music licensing, remember that's a business. So you got to treat it like a business and you got to evaluate yourself. What do I have to offer that is going to want somebody to buy my music? It's a commercial marketplace. You cannot think like a musician once you've decided that you're going to get into this space. So when you submit to my website, it's like you're submitting, I don't know, you could be submitting a widget to me. But for me, is this widget going to work for what I'm doing? I don't want to make it seem like it's valueless, but you have to get in the right headspace for this. And what that means is you have to keep trying and trying and trying. And so when you submit to our website, you got to submit your best version of you. the song that's going to stand out, that's the best in your catalog. And then I'm going to listen to it, although I don't do that much these days because I have staff that does it, and I've trained them how to listen to music for what we do. They are going to listen to the first 30 seconds. And if the mix is low, your vocal is low in the mix, and you're not tight, and your lyrics are kind of dumb, and
Although sometimes dumb works.
sometimes dumb works.
There's no rules.
Like by Kylie Minogue. Sometimes that works.
I mean, sometimes it does.
Is there an AI plugin that says dumb, dumb, dumb?
I wish there was, right? I mean, no, really, I'm joking, but there are things that will not work for 90% of the submissions that we receive. We only take about 10% of what gets submitted, and we have 1,000 songs backlogged every day. I mean, my staff cannot listen. I mean, we listen to music 3-4 hours a day trying to get through tracks of just submissions. So,
which is part of why 30 seconds, if you're not grabbed.
if you're not
You're
grabbed,
hitting skip and you're going to the next one.
you're going to the next one. And no, we don't have time for feedback either.
Yeah.
And
I will say, do you want to know the biggest turnoff when you're submitting music to a company like us? I think you'll agree. Well, you might not deal with the custom side of things, but the number one thing that makes me I don't give a shit, we won't work together, is if you say, I can do anything. Just tell me what I can do. Like, I've got 20 people on staff that can do anything. That doesn't help us at all. It's finding your lane, doing something unique. I know it's counterintuitive. Telling me you can do anything is the immediate trash bin. That sounds horrible. I couldn't be less interested. It doesn't help me at all. I meant that as a positive. It sounded really negative. I meant that in a positive way. Like, be yourself. You know, that's
Dream killer.
Rah. Sorry.
So you said, how many tracks do you guys rep, TANVI?
we have 19,000, and that's a fluid. We lose tracks every week. We add tracks every week.
Totally.
Yeah.
So there's some libraries that claim to have quite a few more, correct?
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, I guess what I wanted to touch on is that I don't think there's probably not a situation where you send to a potential client 19,000 tracks for them to go through. So maybe talk a little bit about
how the pitch
once
goes.
it comes in and how what you're pitching and how you're thinking about it.
So the way you track the metadata that you put in when you submit to us is really helpful to us, and then we tweak it before it goes live. And all that metadata is everything from the genre, making sure the genre is correct, to tempo, to in the style of who are the other artists that you find yourself in the same playlist with, and that all that data is in our database. And then what happens is the pitch. I stay in touch with the supervisors when it's TV shows, it's weekly, and then when it's feature films, it's monthly. And I say, what are you looking for this week? I get a lot of artists that want me to send out, they send me details of how it's like charting and this and that, and I don't need that stuff because the supervisors don't need that from me. They have plenty of major labels doing that to them and taking them out and wining and dining and taking them to shows and stuff. I'm filling a need that is really important for them. They've got 10 cues, they've got $10,000 for the first and the second cue each.
And just to interrupt you, please just, what is a cue for those that might not know?
A cue is a spot in the scene. You know, there's a scene happening and there's a piece of music underneath that needs to be there. Quite honestly, it can be just something you walk into a Cheesecake Factory in the scene and there's a piece of music playing and they've temped in Katy Perry, and they're not going to spend Katy Perry money for a scene in the background at the Cheesecake Factory. So they want something that has that same vibe. And so they'll come to me, and no, I don't pitch them 19,000 songs. I pitch them 5, maybe 10 songs that are in that vein, and that's what they listen to.
So let me just ask you, you mentioned Katy Perry. If somebody comes to you, their temp track was Katy Perry, and they come to you, if somebody is listed sounds like or could be Katy Perry, that's your starting point?
That's your start. Yeah. We just, in our online database, you just type in Katy Perry or Frank Sinatra or, you know, anything, and then songs will come up that are in that style.
How many Taylor Swift requests do you get these days?
Actually, not a lot, believe it or not. Yeah, there's certain artists that you like, you know, Bruno Mars is a big one that they want to have something in that style, the Silk Sonics. Taylor is popular, but I really haven't heard that many requests for things that sound like Taylor.
Okay.
It's more like Lizzo.
Well, they probably are thinking they know up front that they could never afford to get the Taylor song. So
Right,
they
so
don't,
they're
they
not
don't
even
dream of
they're
they
not
don't
even
dream
putting
of
it in. Yeah, mostly you get an email that says I need rock music
By 3 p.m.
by 3 p.m. and I'm like, oh god. And then when I get that, I do email them back and say, can you give me more details? And 50% of the time they don't send me anything, and then I'm just like, oh, I'm not doing that search. I hate to say it because it's like a shooting in the dark.
Right.
And they've sent that email to 10 other companies.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the good supervisors will send you a brief. They'll say, hey, I have a scene. We've used this track. We can't afford it. Here's a scene. The lyric is important. Or here's a scene and the lyric is not important. We just need to match the vibe as close as possible or the tempo. And that's what we get.
And is it usually a yes or no transaction, or do you ever have them come back and say, we like this track, but the keyboard's too loud in it? Can you get us a version with that out or anything like that?
Most of the time, we'd never hear back until they're ready to license.
Okay.
And there's nothing like, oh, what'd you think of the track? Like, I can't ask that.
Right.
They don't have time for that.
We get that often. And a point of order when it comes to presenting, being ready for licensing, I would encourage everyone when you're making your projects, make stems when you make your mix. It's absolutely vital if you want success in licensing.
And I
Run a
assume,
version
I
with no
assume everybody
vocal.
knows what stems are, but just in case, just quickly explain that.
Like if you have a main mix, just mute the vocal, run an instrumental. Then do not forget, do the inverse. Mute everything and run vocals only. That's the bare minimum. I would never stop there. I would then run a pass of drums, pass of bass, pass of guitars, pass of keys, pass of vocals, pass of background vocals. If you're doing specialized like trailer stuff, you've got probably a whole pass of special effects and explosions and thumps and thuds and things. I think you absolutely, it is insane to think you're going to go back a year later. That plugin doesn't work. That sound doesn't load. Oh, I can't get into the studio. It takes 20 extra minutes. It's vital that you do it when you're making a recording.
Another question people are probably wondering, so we talk about the syncs. If they're lucky enough to submit music, they're lucky enough for you to submit it out to the supervisor likes it, they pick a chunk that they want to use in their TV program or thing. How much money are we talking about these days? And I know it varies vastly. Like if you get a McDonald's commercial, that's a much different proposition than being in the Cheesecake Factory scene of Vampire Diaries or something like that.
Yeah, so the studios are really savvy, and there are tons of companies like mine, so they just went out and did deals with these companies so they don't have to worry about clearances, and if something gets used, they know exactly what it's going to cost. So the average fee for an independent artist in a television show is between $1,000 and $2,000 total. And how that is breaks down is 50% of that is for the composition, the publisher's share and the writer's share, and then the other 50% is for the master recording. And so when we license it, we get that money in, and we take 50%, and then we pay you the 50%, and then it's your responsibility. If you are a singer, songwriter, solo, you did it all yourself, you recorded it. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. That $500 is yours. But then if you have co-writers and you have master owners, then you have to start splitting the money apart and paying people out.
What if your co-writer is AI? Very, very of the moment question.
I don't know that one yet. I don't know how.
No idea.
Daniel, how's that going to work out?
No idea. Everyone, if you had answered to that, you'd be making a lot of people very happy.
Exactly.
It's a big gray mess right now. Yeah. I would, just as a word of encouragement, I would avoid AI right now because you really could be limiting. When you're dealing with licensing, you're dealing with usually major corporations who one of the big advantages to working with a company like ours is the liability issue. So we've got insurance. I'm assuming you have insurance.
Of
we have
course.
insurance that protects against lawsuits and things. They don't know what's going on with AI right now. So that's a big mess, and I would avoid it at all costs. Also, don't use Splice samples.
Interesting.
If you want to be in our space, I wouldn't use Splice.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not talking about a drum sample. I'm talking about like a lyric or a hook.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes. There's tons.
I'm not talking about a sound, but like the thing that makes your song.
Like beats. There are a lot of beats companies now that
Yeah.
have full phrases in the chorus.
Yeah, I would not. If you're
We
looking to
don't
get into
take that.
licensing, I would
Yeah.
not use those.
Tommy, just one more
You
question.
want to? No, we're going to do questions later.
Yeah, just one second, Chris. Just one following up. So in addition to that money, then the artists, theoretically, they're still eligible for receiving performing rights royalties?
That's right. Then you get, in our scenario, we're one of the first companies to do this, and there have been tons of controversy over it. We are, and a lot of backstabbing by people, and.
Well, tell them what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll get to it. It's we do non-exclusive music licensing, so we believe that the artist should be able to do whatever they want with their piece of music. They should be able to exploit it as much as they want, and I can't tie up your songs exclusively for 3 years and not generate any income for you. So our deal is a non-exclusive deal, and the way we make that work on the publishing end is we put a catalog number in front of the song title, and when we get you a placement, we register it alongside your registration of your own original composition. And then the performance royalties for those placements that we get you come to us on the publisher side, and then you get the writer's share directly. So we get paid the publisher share directly, you get the writer's share. And then if you get a placement yourself because you're best friends with the supervisor for Miami Vice or whatever the latest greatest TV show is, and you're a buddy and they get it to you, and you put your name with your track title without the catalog number and your publishing entity on the cue sheet, you get that directly. So it works fairly well. And then in any scenario where we get your money by mistake, we pay it out to you 100% without any admin.
And just to clarify, we're talking about two different revenues. This is different revenue than the upfront
That's
license
right.
payment.
This is revenue that you get in perpetuity from your performance rights organization, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC.
Great. Otherwise known as mailbox money.
Mailbox money.
So Daniel, let me ask you this, as somebody that's building libraries or working with people that are building libraries, how much are you trying to build libraries that are either filling a hole that don't exist or speculating that you think this is what's coming next or that there's going to be interest in this? Because I assume if you're just trying to recreate exactly what's happening now, by the time you get it to you, the culture has moved on in some way, or maybe that you should be doing that, and that's exactly what you need.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I think there's a time and a place for all of it. Obviously,
Sorry, could you say that again?
There's a time and a place for all of it. Obviously, I'm in a pretty unique position when it comes to that type of approach because of my deal with Universal. Universal is one of the catalogs you were talking about. I'm a part of a catalog that has 800,000 tracks. It's absolutely gargantuan. I have 6,000 of those, so I'm a little piece of the pie. Or they might have 6,000. I have 600,000 tracks, something like that. But I'm a small piece. And what I very intentionally do is not try to follow what has happened. I'm trying to make stuff that inspires me, that might inspire others. I believe I'm an anomaly in that way. I'm not the normal library company. Most libraries do want things that are trending, things that are happening. To answer it truthfully, from my perspective, I'm usually aiming off of where most of the industry is because I want to beat trends to market or match them. Most of my competitors, that might sound a little arrogant, most of them are following. Most of them do stuff a year after it's been popular is when the album comes out because they see something happening and they want to get to it.
So what sort of sleuthing? I mean, obviously, you wouldn't be doing this if you didn't love music and didn't consume it and stuff like
100%.
that. But as you're thinking about it, wearing two hats, wearing that hat about thinking about libraries and stuff, where are you looking for inspiration? And if you can, maybe give us an example of a library or something that you've pursued recently that you thought like, oh, this could be something that.
Well, I'll tell you something from a couple years ago. We've beat the market. We mentioned this earlier when we were talking, and there's a few trends that happened that we were ahead on because I'm trying to be interested in the same things that I think a lot of people who are making decisions at other companies are interested in. So we came out with a retro synth album before Stranger Things. When Stranger Things happened, every company on the planet had an album of here's retro synth themes. We did it before Stranger Things happened. We came out with K-pop before Psy's Gangnam Style hit the States because we were watching trends overseas. So we're blessed to be in a situation where we've got charts from around the world. We've got just, at the time, I had distributors around the world. We saw this was happening. It's like, I want to have a K-pop record out, and then a month later, Psy hit. I've got the only time I've ever had any kind of copyright trouble. This is how on the trends we are. This is a weird story. You know who this is. I'll tell you later. I can't say it publicly. But we got a call saying, hey, we got a call from Shakira's reps. You've ripped off her song. I'm like, we definitely did not rip off Shakira. And I went and played the track, and I'm like, holy crap, we totally ripped off Shakira. It was the exact same riff. I had a team of guys at the time. I go down to the writer's studio. I'm like, dude, what the hell? You can't be ripping off Shakira. This doesn't make any sense. We don't do that. And we go pull up the session, and we had released our song a week before Shakira did. So we were on the same track with the same plugin, the same whatever. We just happened to cross a vibe. We make thousands of tracks. One got really close to Shakira. And I wish I could tell you the punchline of that joke. I can't because it's so offensive, and it's why I don't work with those people anymore. I was of the opinion we should sue Shakira because we were first to mark. We were out a week beforehand. But anyway, I'll tell you that story privately. Yeah.
TANVI, are there any genres or things that you were surprised or didn't see coming? Like, I mean, does all of a sudden bluegrass come back into fashion, or just like some show hit and then everybody wants a certain genre of stuff, or do you guys just kind of really try and do a really broad spectrum at all times?
Dubstep. I didn't see that one coming. Skrillex. It's like, really? I mean, it's good, but it's like in sync licensing. Like, really? Like all of a sudden everybody's dancing to Skrillex. Like that one was a little.
Club scene in the movie. Everybody wanted dubstep.
Yeah, everybody wanted dubstep, and it lasted a long time. So that was one of them.
I think when "Oh Brother Where Art Thou" happened, that was a big moment for roots music.
For roots music, yeah.
And kind of a throwback to like genuine performances and a couple stringed instruments.
Yeah, it definitely takes a show to keep the momentum going for a specific genre, like Nashville. I work with that supervisor, and we were in every season. And country music we had a ton of it. I mean, my friends in Nashville were submitting, so it's like we had a ton of that. But then what happens is something opposite can happen. Like all of a sudden, Stranger Things is big. And just because now you're like thinking as an artist, oh, Stranger Things is big, and I want to start creating this synth stuff, and I'm going to send it in, and then Stranger Things is going to use it. That doesn't happen. It's already they created it. Their moment in the sun, and then it's over. Like not other shows aren't going to start using Stranger Things style music. That's just not going to happen.
You'll end up in Stranger Thongs, the porn version. Like
Well, I think,
Literally.
an example like that show Yellow Jackets that's popular now really brought like 90s music back to the forefront.
That's right,
because it's part of the storyline. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of that sort of stuff.
One of the biggest trends right now that I'm seeing, and I don't know how to attack it, and it's because it requires a lot of energy in digging and sleuthing, which is a good word, is there's a big trend by supervisors to use vintage music. And vintage 60s, vintage 70s, vintage 80s, meaning they want it recorded back then. And somebody has that stuff sitting around. And the reason why it takes, we don't have a lot of it. When we get the submissions, we take them. But like Yellow Jackets is a prime example, and also Stranger Things. I know the supervisor for both of those shows, and I think she gets those gigs where she can dig up the authentic stuff and use it. The reason why it's difficult is from a catalog perspective is a lot of the rights are unknown, and trying to, people are dead, and trying to find out who owned what. And back in the day, they didn't, they had handshake deals, and we're in a band together, and, I'll pay you when I get paid kind of thing.
Well, this is a good question to ask. So let's say somebody's sitting on this amazing soul record they made in the 1970s and some of that stuff. So if they submit it to you and they say, oh yeah, I've got all the rights, I can totally do that. And then it gets placed, and then somebody all of a sudden hears that song on a show, and they're like, hey, that's my voice on there. Why am I just hearing about this watching Yellow Jackets? Who is liable for that? Is it the person when they click the box and say, I have the ability to send this in? So basically, do you point the lawyers to the artist and you like, Go talk
Okay,
to
this
them.
is
I've got nothing to do
Oh,
with
this
it.
is how this works. I've had this happen.
This is why we have insurance.
This is why we have insurance, and this is how this works. The artist says they warrant it, and it's in our contract, and then another artist comes out of the woodwork and says, I own it, and they usually come knocking on Crucial Music stores and saying, hey, what are you doing? Because I'm the publisher now, and I'm like, well, it's that artist, and this might be 10 years down the road, and that at that point, it's made $20,000 in performance income. The sync was only $1,500, but the performance income is huge. And so then all of a sudden, I'm like, hey, dude, what did you do? You told me you own this 100%. And he's like, eh. And then guess who has to pay out? Crucial Music. Even though I am not the infringing party, but I'm the one that needs to keep the relationship going with the studio. So I have to pay out.
And then if you wanted to, you would have to litigate with the
Artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So I got to make it all good for the studio, and then I have to go deal with the artist. It's happened. It doesn't happen. Thank God it doesn't happen yearly. It has happened in my career, and here's an example of where it's happened, where somebody bought a beat, and there are tons of beat companies where they say, you can buy this for this many digital streams and downloads and whatever, but then there's a separate license for film and TV sync licensing. And if you buy this separate license, you have to list us as the writer, as a 50% writer. And this artist I think he did buy the film license, but then didn't list him as a writer. And then that guy heard it, and he's probably written thousands of songs, but he heard his beat and then came to us. Fortunately, he was a good guy, and he was reasonable, and he understood what had happened, and we settled it easily.
It's amazing, they're like our children. You all of a sudden hear some music you made in the distance. You're like, what? What was that? I know that.
Yeah.
Wands?
What happens? I don't know if people still work with Harry Fox, as you see, to cover like previously released songs. So what happens if you do a cover of somebody else's songs and you're in a deal like you were describing, where you're only going to do say 1,000 copies, but then it gets picked up, and all of a sudden that 1,000 turns into 10,000.
So we actually just launched a cover catalog for our artists. So Harry Fox deals with you pay the Harry Fox for digital streams. I think it's still tiered, right? Do you know about? It is tiered, yeah.
And I'm sorry, can we just give a quick explanation of what Harry Fox
Yes,
does?
Harry Fox is an agency that collects. All the publishers are affiliated with Harry Fox, and they collect royalties from the artist or the record label that is putting out a composition that is owned by somebody else. So if you do a cover song that is, a Pearl Jam cover song, that's owned by Pearl Jam's publishing company. So you go to Harry Fox, and I think these days you can do it through your distributor like CD Baby. They will help you clear that for commercial exploitation, your version of the master recording, and then they'll pay Harry Fox. So that's what Harry Fox
Great,
does.
thank you.
But on the licensing side, you would
It's
still
different.
need. Yeah. Okay, you're getting that.
So it's different on the licensing side. So you've covered yourself. You're on CD Baby. You've released it. You've paid Harry Fox. You pay them every quarter once you get paid royalties, and then you decide I want to get into sync licensing of this cover song, and you don't have to deal with Harry Fox. You actually don't have to do anything. The production that is going to use the piece of music, the cover, reaches out to the publisher to negotiate a license for the composition. And at that point, the only thing that a company like mine is licensing is the master recording. So I deal with the master recording, and the production deals with the clearance with the publisher. Holiday music?
You public domain or covers of.
Yeah, it probably depends on the song.
Oh.
You wanna?
Oh. Sure. Public domain is a copyright that's past its renewal, so it's available. You don't owe anyone, you don't need permission.
The time is it like 75 years?
75
or
years, I
something?
believe.
No, it's
25.
no,
Life of the artist plus 25?
no,
4 years.
no.
You gave it to me. You can answer the question. I don't know.
It's in the United States. It's 70 years. Life of the artist plus 70 years after death. If the song was released or published before 1924 in the United States, then the song itself is public domain, but not everything by that artist is public domain as a result. It's only in the United States. These are the rules in the United States. Every country has their own rules of public domain. In Europe, it's, for example, in France, it's 75 years plus the life of the author plus 14 years for the 2 world wars. And then it gets even trickier. In Mexico, a couple of years ago, well, a while ago, they decided that they were going to protect not only Mexican composers, but any composer that was not public domain by the year of 2003 by their laws at that time, which was 75 years, was now automatically under protection for 100 years. So if you're a music supervisor, it's a nightmare on public domain. So my general rule is if the composer died before 1923 anywhere in the world, it's public domain.
Gotcha. And when you're licensing content, are you oftentimes taking that into account because you're licensing globally for global use? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Christmas music falls into, most Christmas music falls into the public domain category. What's the one? 5 golden rings. What is that?
The
12 Days of Christmas. Yeah. This is what happens when you turn 55. It's like, what? Was I even on key? I don't even think I was.
I didn't know I was going to get Tavi singing.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we don't have any use for that in our licensing catalog. So yeah.
Happy Birthday just went in the public domain a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Well, Happy Birthday was a wonderful story. It was Warner Chappell it wasn't copyrighted correctly, and Warner Chappell basically said that they own the copyright for any version throughout time, and it was proven through actually a documentary. There was a documentary that was coming out on that, and they tried to license Happy Birthday, and Warner Chappell was like, no, you got to pay for it, and those filmmakers said, absolutely not, because here's what we found. And then that went to trial, and Warner Chappell lost the copyright. Not only did they lose the copyright, they had to pay back the money that was licensed that they got.
Well, that's as a kid, I never understood why you'd go to some restaurants and they'd sing Happy Birthday, and they came up with their own song.
That's
because
why.
they didn't want to pay for it.
That's right.
Yeah. Happy birthday, 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 birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the story of the 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah.
So the 12 Days of Christmas is everything but the 5 golden rings is public domain. So if you're using that song as a production, you can go all the way up to the 5 golden rings, and then you have to drop out, or you don't use it.
Why is that?
Because the person that came up with the arrangement with the 5 golden rings was still alive during the time of the copyright laws, and so that portion has to be licensed. Still, it's still copyright protected. That guy's not dead, or not dead long enough.
Right.
Come on.
We've shared a lot of information how this stuff works. Maybe it would be great before we jump into some questions and stuff. Maybe like an inspirational story of a sync that's really done something crazy. That's done
I got
something
one.
Great. Okay, please.
I got one. We were pitching for an insurance spot. This is a big one. It was six-figure license, and it was a great little insurance spot about a guy trying to buy a car, and he was down and out, and he's waiting at the bus stop, and he's getting to work without a car, and it's a one of those every man trying to make a living, and that was the theme of the spot. And we pitched a singer-songwriter, this gravelly solo guitar kind of the hook was "You'll Never Break My Bones," and the guy that sang it was in Scotland, and we FaceTimed him when we told him that he got the license and how much money it was, and he started crying because he worked with disabled children in his town, in his little town in Scotland, and he was trying to scrap enough money together to make another record, and he was able to not quit his job, but he was able to have some financial leeway as a result of that license, and it was it changed his life. And then subsequent to that, we got him some more licenses in Californication and some other places, and he was able to. People would invite him to, he was on the radio, and people would invite him to conferences and stuff. So his life really changed as a result of that.
Let me just ask a follow-up to that is, so when you're pitching stuff, so let's say they chose that song, does that brand then, do they pay extra so they can't license it to?
Yeah, it's a much higher.
If
That's right. If you're getting a 6-figure deal, you're not allowed to license that to the same category, insurance category, for a year. Generally, it's a year, but you can license it everywhere else. So as long as it's not to a competitor, if it's State Farm against Nationwide, you can't do that. And we keep track of that information, so that doesn't happen. In my experience, in my company, it's never happened where somebody else wanted to use the same song in the same category. What about you, Daniel?
Was there one
Well, I don't really, I don't have like stories where I helped people out like you did.
Well, but you have something that you placed that all of a sudden far exceeded your expectations in terms of.
Well, actually, so was it 20 years ago I gave you those couple songs, those jazz songs? I give
Yeah.
tie it back to Tanvi, actually. She's got a couple of my songs from many years ago, 20 years ago. And I just told her last night or today that my highest earning revenue, royalty revenue track is a song that she placed. That's got to be 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, 18. We just launched. So
I'm in the Blind Side movie and Sex and the City with the same song. And to this day, it's the track that earns me the most performance money. It's the track that she collects on the publishing side. So we were saying earlier about like, don't ever sell your publishing and like that idea. It's like that's not even the one I was referencing earlier. Like the most money I ever made was I sold my publishing to the first deal I ever did, and I've never made more money than that. So that was a fun. I didn't expect it because it's just it's this little movie placement, and it's still paying me 20 years later. It's still the biggest thing on my check. So that's fun.
I always love getting my ASCAP statements for music that I've licensed to different film and television stuff, and just seeing where it's being played all over the world, like the different things, and it's like, ooh, I just made 13 cents in the Czech Republic. I'm really into this, that, and the other thing. So what would your advice be? So let's say that everybody out here is sitting on 3 albums worth of material, that they're all thinking about how they're going to come tackle you after this panel and try to shove the CDs or the discs or the links into your pocket. I know you touched on this a little bit, but given your, how do you, to set the tone for the rest of the day, how do you like to be approached about this sort of stuff? And then B, what would you encourage somebody to do? We touched on this a little bit, but would you ask somebody to go back and listen to all their material, or give it to friends and ask them to listen to it and make suggestions?
Oh, don't give it to your friends. They're going to tell you it's great.
Okay.
Wait, our friends or their friends?
Their friends. So should they give it to somebody else and say, hey, what 5 songs out of these 30 songs do you think would be the best? Or is it about your gut feeling? I mean, I'm just thinking like,
bad advice, but I think your parents and your friends and your fans are there to like your music, even if it sucks. I mean, that's what they're there for. So I think it's really important that you get it, feedback from people who aren't your friends, because usually it's more unvarnished, and I've got no stake in it. So it's like, this doesn't work for me. Here's why.
There is a company that we used in the early days, and I think they do a really decent job of giving you feedback, and it's called taxi.com. And for a subscription, which, by the way, the yearly subscription is paid back by having the ability to go to the conference. And I'm not plugging them, but it's just honest. You're going to get, if you want feedback from people that are actually in the business, that they're giving you an objective feedback. That's a good company to go, try a couple songs with them, and then have them submit, and they get pitches as well, and they will give you feedback, and they may or may not forward it to the pitch. I'm not exactly sure how it all works, but
they're genuine.
they're genuine.
It's not a scam.
It's not a scam. It really isn't a scam. I know the owner, and he, people, it just takes one bad apple to kind of ruin a career. It's genuine, and they'll give you good feedback. Because we can't give you feedback, I know it seems like it's like you guys are lost out there, and that's a horrible position to be in. But yeah, if you can get somebody that's going to give you some feedback that's honest, that's not somebody who loves you so much, that you can get some honest feedback and then submit your best material if they'll help you find out what that material is, and that's the best way to go about it.
I'll give you two if I can.
Oh yeah, please do. I was just going to say that, probably point counterpoint, and you guys have identified this too, is that you're going to hear different things from different people. Some people like stuff, some people hate stuff, but all it takes is one person that likes it, that is in a position to place it, and then pretty soon it could be that people are chasing that forever. But it's always great to have feedback.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll give you two sides of that in terms of feedback and kind of having people listen to it and getting an opportunity. I would say your best opportunity I'll speak personally with me, I'm impressed when people listen to the work that I've done or my company has on hand already. And if you've listened to, not everything, we've got 6,000 songs. I'm not saying that, but approaching me with an email that says, hey, I noticed you don't have this in this label, and I think it'd be great on that label. I've done a couple, here's a link. First of all, do not attach MP3s to an email. Horrible. My spam filter, everyone's spam filter, that's not the way to do it. But send a link to a streamable thing, a Dropbox link or a SoundCloud or something, with some specifics about, like, I listened to this is a hole in your catalog, I thought this might work. That is, I know it seems like you're doing a little bit of my work, but it's a way to catch my ear and be like, this person gives a little bit of a crap, and like they did a little bit of research, let's see if it fits and see if it works. I will probably respond to you if you do that. If I get an email, like I said earlier, I can do anything. I'm a producer. I've been producing for 25 years. My grandma says I'm really good at hip hop. It's like, that doesn't help me at all.
Wait a minute, my grandmother said I'm really good at hip hop.
It's I literally delete those immediately. It doesn't sound pleasant. There's too many of them. We get them all day long. They're not helpful. So the way to get our attention, I think a lot of people are in my position where if you want to be catching the ear of somebody who has a library or a catalog and you want to be writing for them, find a hole in their catalog that you think you can do and pitch them an idea. That's a way to catch their attention.
Same goes for a music supervisor. You want to pitch directly to a music supervisor, you need to research what they're working on, and a lot of times they're on shows that are a few seasons in, so you can go to tunefind.com and they'll list every show that's ever been made with all the music that's in each show, and so you can go listen to what the supervisor's using and say, oh yeah, my stuff can fit within this. The thing is supervisors most likely not going to use a track that has, like, say they're working on the next Jaws film and you've just written a song about a shark attack. They're probably not going to use that. So get off that track. Try to find something that is going to work similar to what they've been using and the themes of the show. And most shows have romance and tension and this and loss. And I also, on that route, love songs, there's too many of them. Let's write about universality of loss and life and philosophy and mistakes and change and empowerment. That's a lot of what people are looking for as well. Yeah, love songs are fine, but it's a lot harder to place love songs, believe it or not, than it is these other things that happen to you in your life, and you write about them.
I've got a quick counterpoint,
Yeah,
a positive, empowering counterpoint. I'll tell you a little story from the beginning of my career. In contrast to what I just said, when you get rejected, when you get told no, you're not right for what you're working on, send it off to anybody and they say this doesn't work, or you don't even hear back. It just gets sent to the dustbin. My first library that I started in 1996, our mentor, Jim, I had sent him I was working for his library at the time, the company that TANVI actually started with in Nashville. And I had sent them a bunch of tracks that I believed in. I thought they were great. And I had a contract for other genres. I was doing other stuff for them. But I'm like, here's some stuff that I really believe in, and I really do it. He rejected the stuff outright. He's like, that doesn't work. It's distorted. It's this, it's that. It was intentionally distorted. He didn't know that at the time. Jim was not the coolest kid on the block, but he was like, yeah. So my library that I started in 1997, the first track on the first 2 albums are the 2 rejections from that deal. And I launched my whole career as a library owner from those 2 tracks that were rejections. So just to, not that you can replicate that or that I'm that special, but just it is important to think and believe in what you're doing and to find your own thing. It's really difficult. It's more difficult now than it was in 1996. It is. But just because people tell you no doesn't mean you're not doing something that's valuable or worthwhile. But it could. You might need to keep music as a hobby. You might not be good enough. But finding people that can give you honest feedback and say, this isn't right for us, but it's quality and you just need to find the right home, that's a really important point to get to in your creative process and figure out, like, am I just not finding the right avenue for this, or should I just do this in my basement and have fun? That's an important distinction. So.
I'm going to open up for questions. I just want to say one last thing is that, you know, I would encourage people, these folks have great companies, they rep a lot of artists, but they're just 2 people in this world, and that there's tons of, you know, going directly, you mentioned to supervisors is a possibility, but to filmmakers. There's all kinds of people making films in our independent films and things in our community, and they're always looking for music too. And if you're willing to license stuff or work out for festivals, you know, any of that sort of stuff, it's a way of getting your stuff going, and then people may see that stuff as well. And
those people's career rise, and
yeah,
they want to work with people.
The rising tide raises all boats.
Well, if I reject your song, and 90% chance I will, doesn't
this
mean
is the uplifting part.
this is the
Yeah, but that doesn't apply to this room.
No,
right?
no. That's the negative part. Here comes the positive part. The 90% reason why I've rejected your song is not because it's bad. It's because I can't do anything with it. Because I don't have the type of clients that we actually have 2 different sets of clients. My clients are not always his, and his clients are never mine. Meaning, through Universal, they've got blanket deals with E! Entertainment and Fox Sports and these big networks that they're like music munchers. They just go out and use as much music as they can. And I don't have those clients. Music munchers.
.com. I'm getting that URL right now. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's
I do,
it's like I didn't take your hip hop beat or your rock instrumental because I have no place to put that. I have very specific film and TV clients that are films and TV shows, and they are usually needing songs with vocals, or you know, they need very specific things. So when I take songs, I'm listening for what I can do. If I can make you money, I'm going to take your song. If I can't make you money and I take your song, in 6 years, you're going to be mad at me. Yeah. You're going to send me an email and say, I'm not renewing because you haven't made me a dime. And I'm like, yeah, sorry.
I always love when, like, I'm a glutton for music documentaries and stuff, and there'll be like a really cheaply produced one. I'm thinking like there's like Nirvana ones or different things like that, and they can't afford to use any of the real music, or the band wouldn't sign things. And you're listening to this like kind of stuff that kind of sounds like that, but not really. And I always wonder, who made that?
You know who killed that? The Hendrix documentary killed it.
Oh, really?
Because they couldn't get any of Jimi Hendrix's music. The estate wouldn't license any of the music, but they used like Hendrix-ish feedbacky stuff to soundtrack to it. It's a fascinating documentary and study in music supervision for exactly that reason.
Right.
They couldn't
get sued. It wasn't so close.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. It was really cool.
All right, well, we've got about 10 minutes for questions. You in the back, sir.
Like, as an instrumental composer, obviously you guys are dealing mostly with songs and you're talking mostly about songs, like so many sync licensing agencies and stuff. But as an instrumental composer, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about submitting to Crucial specifically, because I've certainly gotten a lot of rejections from you. I'm very thankful for that.
Without feedback.
I would work really hard I would rather work really hard to be part of a smaller company than be in a library.
Sure. So
But when I choose songs, or when anyone else chooses songs, really, when anyone chooses songs to submit to a company like yours, or yours specifically, and we don't know what you're looking for, how are we supposed to choose a few songs? And when you say like production quality, what do you mean by that?
Oh boy.
those are two questions there. The two. Let me answer the first one.
That's a big question because
Well,
it's
then-
like lo-fi, crappy sounding stuff gets licensed all the time.
That's
but
true.
It's not broadcast quality. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, let me answer
Yeah.
the instrumental portion, and then you can answer the production quality portion.
Awesome.
Uh, so we do license instrumental music, but it's material that is generally lives in the commercial world as instrumental music. So that would mean jazz music. We license it all day long. Classical, string quartets, a jazz cocktail piano, solo piano. We actually, the Seattle community has some amazing jazz musicians, and they have all found me. And I make a bunch of people here that live in the Seattle area that are jazz musicians. It's probably my second or third largest sync licensing revenue comes from jazz music. Because for some reason, forever, the music that is played in a hotel lobby is jazz. Forever, or a restaurant. Nothing else plays in these elegant places. Similarly, in an elevator, bossa nova is about the only thing you'll ever hear in an elevator, even though that's not true.
Do you have a for elevators only catalog? that you rep?
we have an elevator subgenre. So yes, so if you're making elevator music and bossa nova instrumentals and classical and really weird, electronica, dance music, tropical house, dubstep, all those instrumental genres are very useful, and you can submit that. And if you're going to submit instrumentals, it's I would say whatever is trending is fine. You know, that genre, if it's trending, then submit that. If you're submitting songs that sound like Coldplay from the 2000s, I'm not going to take them. That are instrumental. I'm just not going to take them. I'm not going to take hip hop beats because A, you have the beat problem, and B, nobody's asking me for hip hop beats. They're asking me for hip hop that's lives in the world of Drake and the latest hip hop artists. So that's does that answer that question adequately? I hope. Yeah, okay. And then production quality.
Production quality is such a weird one because it's tied to taste, and taste is really hard to define in any industry, but especially music. I don't know how to answer it. The reality is if your own creative planet is large enough that you're drawing people into your orbit, you're kind of defining a taste and a thing, and it can be anything. There are artists who distort vocals and it's the right thing. Often if you distort vocals, it's a bad thing. You can distort drum loops or have really clean drums. It's so genre dependent, it's application dependent. And I'll tell you something that's related to production quality and the impression people have when they listen to it that is a little more overarching advice for when you're submitting things. I think one of the most fascinating things about music is how much it can change your mood, but the inverse is true as well. The mood that you're in affects how you hear the music that's on. So one of the things that's really important to remember when you're submitting things is sometimes people listen to things and they've had a crap morning. And they're not going to like what they heard.
Right.
And that was your one shot. It had nothing to do with you. So, and you're not going to get feedback unless you're working with Taxi or something you might get. But even the reviewers of Taxi, they might have a bad day and they reject something. And you're like, damn it, it's so good. And you don't know why, and it just is what it is. The reality is this business is filled with rejection and no's and oh my God, and how many, it's Sisyphus all your life. It just is. So embrace that, find a thing that you love doing. That's why I said earlier, finding a reason to do it that is not commercially motivated, not that it can't be or that there's no reason to think about that, but you have to find joy in making stuff because you love making it. And the success that comes after that is, I realize you want to build a business around it, you need to be successful, you need to pay bills. I understand those are things that are important. But the most important thing in my mind, I'm a bit of a romantic about it. If you don't love making the music, if you don't love the way it sounds, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks anyway. So you may as well make something that you love. And it might get rejected for reasons that you just can never put your finger on.
You just got to keep trying, and you can't just submit one track and say, oh, I got one track in and it's been in your catalog for 3 years and it hasn't made any money. It's because it's one track. It's about volume. I mean, I can't run a licensing business on one sync placement. It's, you know, it's about volume. Like,
You mean it's not the mythical golden sink?
it's not the
The
golden sink.
retirement sink?
There is no retirement sink.
Another good company name, though.
Retirement sink.
Well, all right, folks. Please give these guys a round of applause.